Hello friends, our first episode is in the World Expo Museum. Its headquarters is in Shanghai, China, and has its pavilion at the Dubai Expo. To know the whole story of the Expo and the reasons for holding these 6-month exhibitions around the world, let's go inside and see what's happening. Here is a description of the BIE. BIE is the World Expo organization based in Paris. Here, the significant dates of the BIE are mentioned. For example, 1928, when the BIE Treaty was signed. But before that, let's go back to the story of the origin of the Expos. It all started in London in 1851, where the first Expo was held. Now, the important question that arises for many is what exactly is an Expo? Expos are places to share and exhibit communities, economics, culture, and technology of different nations that ultimately lead to global education, innovation, and collaboration in noteworthy fields. Here we have a touchscreen where you can see the history of the World Expos. For instance, the French Expo in 1889 was a very important expo because the Eiffel Tower was unveiled at this expo. Or the 1876 American Expo, which is one of the oldest. You're seeing the country's pavilion. This is the Pavilion of France. And this is the Ladies' Pavilion. At each expo, we have a pavilion with the same name. In the Dubai Expo, there is also Women's Pavilion. This is a model of the site of the world's first expo in 1851 at Crystal Palace, London. Well, here they say that the European Industrial Revolution has caused the first expo in the world, and the movement of holding expos in the world has started from London and Europe. Here are put some pictures of the zones of many countries in the first London Expo. Here is an industry pavilion. The London Expo was held at the time of the first Industrial Revolution, and the growth of industry and machine building was very important to the people of that time. So, they had a special pavilion at the Expo. This image also shows a view of the inside of the Crystal Palace where the first World Expo had been held. Here are the world-famous buildings and institutions that were unveiled at the Expo. This is the Statue of Liberty, which was made in France, and the head part was unveiled at the Expo. And after the rest of the parts were made, they were transferred to the United States. This is the symbol of the 1939 Expo, which was unveiled in New York. This is the Space Needle Tower that was unveiled at the 1962 Seattle Expo. And this is the Atomic Pavilion, which was unveiled in 1958 at the Brussels Expo. Here we have the world's first Ferris wheel, which was unveiled in 1893 at the Chicago Expo. This is the symbol of the 1967 Montreal Expo in Canada, which is a dome-shaped structure called the Fowler Dome. Interestingly, the Dubai Expo is also the main symbol of a dome structure. Al Wasl Plaza is the biggest projection dome in the world. And you see the Wright brothers plane here, which was unveiled at one of the expos. We had big unveilings at the expo that were historical themes, such as the Wright brothers plane, which had its first successful flight in California in 1903, and was unveiled at the expo a year later in 1904 in St. Louis. And in this part, they say that Mr. Thomas Edison participated in 5 expos and unveiled his most important achievements in the expos, including incandescent lamps and phonograms. The unveiling of the Eiffel Tower was such a big event that it was unveiled at the Paris Expo in 1889, and here is a complete wall dedicated to this story. Regarding the history of this case, Mr. Eiffel's proposal was selected from the 100 submitted proposals, and the tower was ready to be unveiled by the 1889 Expo. In this part, they are also presenting the attendance of the world's great artists and writers in the expo. For example, the presence of Mr. Picasso in the 1937 Paris Expo, who painted the Spanish Pavilion. And Ms. Helen Keller, a well-known American author, who has mentioned in her book The Story of My Life that Ms. Sullivan and Dr. Alexander Graham Bell visited the 1893 Chicago Expo. This part is also related to the 2025 Osaka Expo in Japan, and in the picture, you can see the site of this expo that is going to be held on an artificial island in Osaka and is about 20 to 30 minutes away from the city center. In this episode, and this pavilion, we saw the history of the expo together, and what the nature of it is, and why it's held in the world, and what the importance of the expo is. From the next episode, we will enter the pavilions themselves and explore the story of each country.